I briefly worked at a gas station. I say briefly because I was robbed 3 times in my 6 months. On the third robbery the guy comes in and appears to point a gun through his jacket at me. I raise my hands and tell him to chill, I'll give him what he wants. He asks for all the money in the drawer, I only had $30, he gets pissed that's all he's getting and I go, why not just take a bunch of carton of cigarettes? He goes, what? I go, a single cartoon is more than $30. He asks, why are you telling me this? And I said, I just work here, I don't care what you take. He takes his hand out of his pockets, leaving the gun, if he had one, but I didn't feel like finding out, in the pocket, and says, you really don't give a fuck what I take? I go, no, I really don't. So he tells me to give him all the cartons I can and I do, and I ask him if he wants a bag with that ... and he looks at me all confused and says sure, so I give him a bag. He stuffs about 10 cartons into the 2 bags and apologizes and runs out. I then call the cops. My coworker who was hiding in the back comes out and is like, you really gave him advice on how to steal from us? And I just shrugged my shoulder and said, I'm not dying for this gas station. I quit that night. I was tired of being robbed. I work as a toy shop cashier, shop assistant with a 12-hour workday schedule. Our boss and me with my coworkers have a deal that we'd usually just change on the register each day, and that the one attending the register that day would solely focus on it and would leave tasks around the store for the others. Alongside toys, we also sell stationery and maternity supplies, including prams, baby walkers and high chairs. It was late afternoon, around the time that we'd usually schedule a quick afternoon break, and one of my coworkers was on a sick leave that day, so I was all alone at the ground at the time. Usually when a customer asked for directions, I'd try to navigate them with words rather than leading them to the dedicated alley, as I usually would if I had a backup coworker with me. A younger, soon-to-be parents, couple came in and they headed straight towards our pram display, while a very nice and patient elderly man came up to me asking whether I could demonstrate him one of the RC cars from our shop. So as I was changing the batteries in the car, the man from the aforementioned couple came by asking me whether I could show him how to fold one of the prams. I gave him a quick brief, explain what and where needs to be pulled and pressed, but it was no good, and he asked me if I could just go and show him, with a very annoyed and arrogant manner, condescending even. I politely told him that I'm currently busy and see how I'm the only one at the ground at the moment. I'm not particularly permitted to leave the register, but I would be able to help him in about 5 minutes as my coworker's break was about to end soon. Still no good, as he stepped up a notch and raised his voice, asking what was preventing me from showing him it real quick. I was still in the process of changing the batteries to show the RC car to the elderly man, and he said that he wouldn't mind waiting. My coworker, who was also coincidentally the shop manager, overheard our argument and rushed back to see what was going on. And when I briefed him about what was ensuing, this younger man realized he was the manager and promptly responded, "I would like to complain about this young lady's unwilling attitude to help a customer." To which my manager just nonchalantly replied, "This young lady hasn't breached a single code of conduct of our company. She's currently preoccupied and would have been taming the shop alone until recently. Now, how may I help you?" After that you could see the one vein on this guy's forehead showing as he raged back to his lover, and they both promptly stormed out of the shop. So since this sub doesn't seem to allow links anymore, just look on my profile for the same title to understand what is going on. This week, I talked to my coworkers who did the delivery to this customer to ask how it went. One said it went fine, but I don't know what the heck the customer is smoking to think their order could be boomed. They explained to me the delivery was to a small trailer park. The kind with the narrow single-lane roads, with almost 90-degree turns in the road. My boom truck usually goes into adjacent lanes when making turns on regular roads because it's so long and big that it requires such a wide turn. They also explained to me the roof the customer wanted all the heavy roofing material boomed onto was a old, small house trailer. The kind with the flat roofs, and the trailer itself so old, it still has ribbed steel for the exterior body of the trailer. If I had attempted to boom their order onto the customer's roof, which I wouldn't have when seeing the situation, their roof would have given out, because the order itself weighed over a ton. So, I recently got a job at a store that sells cheap stuff for around $1 or more. Most customers are usually polite and very pleasant to talk to. Some, however, make me seriously regret accepting this job. Today I had one of those customers. A woman came into my line today with one thing and she did the dumb thing of putting her cash on the belt. Which you should never do because the belt acts like a vending machine when you put paper money on it. Henceforth the belt took her $5 bill and she instantly started flipping out like crazy, and I mean she was hysterical. She stated how she wasn't leaving until she gets her $5 back. Then she starts making a list of demands such as wanting to talk to the owner of the store. There is no owner. Highest manager is the DM. Wanting us to take the whole belt apart to fish out her lost Lincoln. Which is physically impossible to do so. Suggesting we write her a check for the money she lost. Basically blaming us for her lack of common sense. Like fully blaming me, as if I did it on purpose because customers are of the devil or something. She's holding up a line of people while her meltdown is going down. While me and the assistant manager try to figure out what to do. She took care of the line. We eventually decide to let her take 3 more things on top of the one thing she was already getting. I accidentally told her she could take 4, and she wouldn't hear any other variation. She was adamant about the fact that she could take 4 things. That was my bad, I worded it wrong. But she was still acting like an ass about it. Eventually she goes off into the aisles to grab whatever else she wants. A few minutes later I see her trying to walk out with a handful of stuff. And we have to stop her from walking out, and tell her she needs to scan this stuff. She gets offended by this tumult. Eventually she calms down and says she's not a bad person, lets us scan her stuff and she leaves. The friend she was with has said nothing this whole time, haha. My drawer would have been 5 short, but a really nice lady gave me the $5 because she didn't want me to get in trouble over this and she agreed that woman was crazy. I do agree anyone would be annoyed at this happening, but it's not an excuse to act like a toddler. Edit. So today at work, I noticed a screw-in wooden compartment door under the belt on the customer side. We probably could have opened that somehow, but at the time with all that was going on, and the assistant manager being super unhelpful, it again wasn't possible. Worked as a manager of a liquor store for about 3 years in my area. I live in rural SME, so it's a small area. In this store there was one person working 90% of the time, so there were no scheduled breaks. This night was slow as hell, so around 6:30 p.m. I went to use the bathroom. I heard our door buzzer go off and yelled that I would be right there, so I hurried up and got back out front, and I see a guy walking out the door from behind the counter with like 6 bottles of liquor and a few cartons of smokes. I loudly said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "I'm not stealing," and threw everything he had in his hands at me before continuing to run out the door. If he wasn't stealing, why didn't he buy the stuff? Why did he tell me he wasn't stealing? This interaction haunts me at night sometimes because I have so many questions. Almost 20 years ago, I'm now 37/M, I used to work for a large retailer with lots of stores around my country. I worked in the warehouse collecting stuff and sending them to other stores. I was one of the guys in charge of the groceries section of the warehouse. We had these collecting forklifts, I don't know the exact name for them, but they had the forks for the pallet behind the machine and driven from the front. Kind of like truck of forklifts. These were quite heavy machines. One week the warehouse was ongoing some renovations and they installed new pallet shelves for our grocery section. The work had already started on weekend, and when we came to work on Monday, most of the stuff was already done. These shelves were very long and high, if you know what a large warehouse shelving looks like. The shelves were bolted to the floor in the corner, leg protection covers were added so no one would damage the legs. Damaging them could cause the shelves to fall like dominoes, like in one of those viral accident videos. While starting my day's first job, I noticed that one shelf was missing the corner protection. I immediately called my boss and informed me about it. He said the installation team had already left because they were in a hurry and it's no big deal, that they would get them to install it later. I told him there is no protection on the leg and it's right on the corner of a main corridor with lots of forklift traffic. He didn't really care and told me just to be careful. I shrugged and went back doing my job. On the afternoon I had completely forgotten about the whole thing. I was driving towards that particular corner like usual. What I didn't notice though, was a relatively large spill on the floor. Later this was confirmed to be water, as I was taking the corner to an aisle. Because the forklift truck thing I was driving had its steering on the front on a single rubber wheel and the warehouse floor was painted, I completely lost control of the machine in the puddle. I hit directly the unprotected corner leg of the new shelf. The whole shelf was shaking and the shelf corner leg actually completely separated from the bottom plate and bent to a 45-degree angle. Also my almost full grocery pallet toppled and spread all across the corridor. I immediately jumped back because I thought the whole shelf will fall. Luckily it wasn't completely fully stocked at the time, so it didn't. The sound of the impact attracted lots of workers to see what was going on. My boss soon arrived and wasn't happy. He tried to blame me, but I told him he was aware of the lack of protection as I had told him this earlier. Also one of my colleagues was near when I told my boss this, so he confirmed that my boss was aware of this. The reason for the water puddle was not found, but it was found to be the cause of the accident. Later that day when I continued my work, I drove past the same spot this happened. The installation team was there replacing the leg and installing corner protectors. I guess they weren't that busy after all. I don't know if my boss had any aftermath with this incident.